Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar, Microsoft 365, a journey, not a destination. We are so glad you guys have chosen to spend this next hour with us, taking a look at some of these presentation topics, and we really hope you'll enjoy some of the information that you get to hear today. For the benefit of those not currently Kite Tech clients or working with us in some capacity, just some general information about Kite Technology Group. We are a managed services IT provider serving small and medium-sized businesses across the whole US. We specialize in serving independent insurance agencies, nonprofits, and other professional organizations, but there's a whole bunch of industries we get to work with and are looking forward to exploring some options if your team is looking for a provider. We strive to help clients leverage their technology for improved efficiency, more effective operation, and also security to just improve general business performance. And we'd love to have a conversation about that. This slide has a great highlight of some of the areas of service that we get to help clients with. Again, feel free to reach out in the chat or also get in touch with some of the contact information towards the end of today's presentation. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over the presentation here to Adam, who's our awesome Microsoft 365 expert, and we'll see you guys in a little bit later for questions at the end. Adam?
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the intro there. Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Atwell, as Ryan said, and I have the privilege of helping shape our Microsoft strategy and vision here. I'm been here at Kite Tech for a decade now and a few months, and throughout probably the last 5 years, really been heavily involved in Microsoft 365 cloud adoption, our technical leadership, as well as part of our executive leadership team here and helping shape our strategy. And so excited to be here with you guys today and kind of talk about a perspective that maybe you hadn't considered on Microsoft 365. So let's take a brief look at the agenda. You can see there, these are the things we committed to share with you, and I hope I'm able to make good on the commitment and your expectations for the time we have together. I just wanted to start out by going back in time, not too far, but a few slides back, and at some point you signed up for our webinar, and we talked about kind of this mentality we have over here, and it's that, you know, Microsoft 365 is a journey, not a destination. And so a lot of times people are like, what does that mean? What do you really mean by that? And so I think it's really relevant to start by just kind of setting the stage for how we think about Microsoft 365. So a lot of folks think of it kind of like something you consume. You pay a monthly fee, it meets a need, and it does those things, but it's a bit more than that. We consider it kind of a journey. Why? Because one, it keeps changing. Two, because really there's so many different ways you can use it that you can get value out of it in lots of different ways. Every organization is really unique in their needs and approach. And that means that it's not going to be one size fits all. It's not going to be the exact same way or method you might use it. And so really think of me for this conversation as somebody who's trying to change your thinking or allow you to think differently, maybe about your approach to Microsoft 365. And I'm going to use a phrase here that one of my partners in crime, Jason Goebel, uses all the time. And it's that, you know, we really want to help be your spiritual guide through this process. And so that's how we see being a steward of technology. And that's kind of what we want to do here today in sharing this stuff with you guys. So the one other thing I'll say before we dive in here is that all the stuff that I'm covering literally comes from Microsoft directly. Now, we've sliced it up and diced it up and tried to make it in a digestible format here to consider and review. But this stuff really is, you know, straight out of Microsoft. It's not rocket science. It is tricky to unpack, and it does require some strategy, but this stuff is direct from Microsoft. And so it's out there for you to find. And we will be sending the links and everything as we roll through to the end of this. But let's dive in. So for starters, we talked about kind of the product offerings, right? And so we're going to just jump straight into these offerings. And you'll see here on the screen, this is something you've probably seen before, 3 different tiers of business offerings. Now today, I'm going to just call out, we're not here to talk about Microsoft 365 for the enterprise. We're here to talk about it for SMB and medium business as Microsoft defines it. And so one important thing to know, other than the fact that the enterprise offerings on Microsoft 365 are almost double in price. They start at about $36 per user, I think it's at today, for a similar version of what you see there for $22 for the SMBs. And so Microsoft defines that number of business, small to medium to enterprise at 300 users. So as soon as you get to 301, then you're going to find limits in terms of what you're able to do. And more than that, you're also going to find that the kinds of things that you actually have to manage, monitor, and pay attention to, they increase. The larger you get, the more eyes you have on you, the more boxes you need to check from a compliance standpoint. And so those tools and the needs look very different. On the screen there, I'll point out Business Basic. So Business Basic is $6 per user per month. And these are just cloud services, right? And this is kind of where a lot of our customers started on their journey when they were just exploring Microsoft Exchange or Exchange Online. And so we did that for a while, hosted email. You've probably moved past that journey at this point, and you're moving towards not just the concept of leveraging cloud services and paying monthly, but you're also probably paying for cloud-bound Microsoft 365 desktop apps. And so you see that middle tier there has come along, and that these offerings have been here for years. They had different names. They're on the screen there. But those offerings, when you go and you leverage the cloud services and the desktop apps, you're just getting the desktop apps, right? $12.50, price is about double. And then you look over to the far right, and that's the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Obviously, you get the cloud apps, you get the desktop apps, but you also get this comprehensive security approach. And so we're going to dive into some of these things at a more detailed level, but the simple version of what you don't get from a business premium to business standard view is really that look at the whole organization, the data, the devices, and the identities associated with using these cloud services. And so that's a high level view. Let's dive in a little bit deeper here. If you take a look at the picture on the screen here, this is a chart right off of Microsoft's web page. And you can see here, it actually shows you what is included or partially included with each of these services. Now you'll notice the trend in the check boxes from left to right. The more you get to the right, the more check boxes you get, right? And you'll see here that mobile device management, PCs, and advanced threat protection are some of the biggest call outs to the business premium line. Now, you might actually see a little bit of a trend if you look a little deeper, and you'll notice that there's actually this partially included service. And I'm going to kind of sit here and talk about this point here for a minute, because I think this is an often oversight when people think about the consumption, if you will, or the use of Microsoft 365 services. So security and compliance is something that Microsoft shares responsibility with, but they do expect that the customer has a role in that responsibility. And so if you break this out a little bit more and you look at the whole security and compliance breakdown, you will find there in the red that Microsoft acts as a processor for the data, and Microsoft acts as a controller for the data, which some people would say, okay, Microsoft's securing my stuff. But if you read a little bit further, you find out that one, Microsoft leaves it up to you to be responsible for your data, and they're never going to be responsible for it. It's a customer responsibility. They're just giving you the keys to their platform where you can leverage their tools to process, manage, or control access to your data. And that's an important thing to call out, because a lot of folks just consume the service without any active management or role inside of protecting their data and who can use it and where. So that's kind of high level, and you can expand all these checkboxes on their website and get a little bit further out. But what we're going to do now is actually jump into some of the expanded view on these in a little bit of a table view. So you can see here the Microsoft 365 services, and these are ones that you're familiar with, right? And you'll notice that most of these boxes do look very much the same. So the business basic, the business standard, and the business premium all pretty much include the same services with one major exception, and it's that the business basic does not include the desktop apps version of the products. You can use the web apps, you can use them on mobile, but you're not going to get the downloadable, installable, full-featured application on your PC or Mac. And so that's one thing to really call out. A lot of folks are familiar with this feature set. They know what teamwork and communication looks like. We're a few years removed from when COVID started, so folks know about Teams and Zoom and other platforms for video calling and meetings. They also know about how kind of, collaborations used across intranet, like SharePoint. They're definitely familiar with the Word, PowerPoint, Excel applications of the world and have been using those for years, I'm sure. Some folks are really starting to use those and do the collaboration, but that's not really new news. And then, of course, there's boring old email and calendar, and that's just more of the same, guys. Nothing really major there. The one substantial call out there, you'll notice if you look deeper, is that Exchange Online archiving. And so that is a feature that only comes with the business premium account. Everyone knows that they consume email, but not everyone thinks about managing that email. And so the concept of archiving it is similar to files and folders that you might have physically or digitally. You put them away and you only need them for a certain amount of time, and then they go in cold storage. That's kind of a consideration for how to look at archiving. So this is the basic feature set. And these are all ones that are very much common knowledge, and folks are really pretty comfortable with them. Let's take a look at the next slide. And these, excuse me there, had to take a sip of my drink. These are ones that are much, much less commonly known in most circles we experience when we have conversations with folks. And so I just want to just call out, you'll see that these are really the foundation of certain different regulations and compliance kinds of things that are really starting to become table stakes in the world we live in. I don't think it's any secret that security is ever growing and changing in terms of requirements, and Microsoft continues to double down in their investments there. So let's talk about these categories just in specific sections so we can understand kind of the basics of what what they really do and mean. So e-discovery and audits, this is a mechanism where, if you happen to have an issue with maybe you have an employee that maybe needs to be moved on, or they've been let go for some reason, that gives you the ability to kind of pause their email in time and preserve things. That's an on-demand kind of feature that's coming at you there from e-discovery and audit. So that's included in the business premium piece. In addition to that, information protection, you're going to get the ability to do things like email encryption, data loss prevention, which is ways to scan your email messages and say, is there any information in this email that maybe we don't want to transmit, like a social security number or a driver's license number? You can set up triggers for those kinds of things depending on your business needs. And then there's other things too, like cloud app discovery. That's really a taller order and a much larger beast to unpack. But I'm sure you've been exposed to sharing your data with other cloud platforms where you go to log in somewhere and they say, do you have a Microsoft account for work? Yes. Or school? Yes, I do. And then it links up and it asks for your permission. And so a lot of businesses don't really manage the cloud app connections between their Microsoft 365 environment and, and other cloud sources. And so you could be syncing and sharing data across other different platforms that you don't even know about. And so as an entry to managing cloud apps, Microsoft's giving you discovery capability or a window in to see that. Moving down the stack a little bit, email and collaboration security. So of course, in emails, you want to have safe links. You want to have chat that's secure. Of course, attachments in email, you want those to be scanned. And of course, you want to look for things like phishing or ways that, messages come through and try to trick you to do things that you shouldn't be doing online. That's email and collaboration. In addition to that, the lower end of this graph really kind of shows where things have moved in terms of device management, identity and access management, a little bit of virtual desktop, as well as, of course, the new and ever growing requirements of maintaining and managing security on devices. And so that device management piece allows you to either manage your own company resources if you own them. They also allow you to manage perhaps applications. So let's say you want to give your employees the ability to use corporate email on their mobile device, but you don't necessarily want to manage their whole device because there's a lot of personal information that comes along with that. So mobile application management is one of the tools in the stack here that allows you to say, you may only get your company email in Outlook, and when you download Outlook and log in, we can enforce a PIN and limit you from copying and pasting data outside of the managed apps. And that goes along true for other apps like Teams and OneDrive and others, of course, Outlook. So that's a little bit on device management. And then if you look at access management and security, really a lot of those things are centered around managing the identity or the person, itself. And so those things are all baked in here. MFA and the ability to say, limit logins to only trusted devices at trusted locations, in your offices and those kinds of things. And then, of course, Microsoft's extending some of the licensing benefits where you could log on to a shared computer and everyone that has a license could leverage that same license there on the desktop because you're paying monthly for it. And then, of course, as well, it extends to Azure Virtual Desktop if desktops in the cloud are something that you're using. And then last but not least is the new investment Microsoft's made in endpoint security. And so they've really been doing a huge investment in a product they're calling now Microsoft Defender for Business. And it's also extending out to mobile device platforms as well, not just Windows and Mac OS, but iOS and Android. So the security needs are going to continue to grow, and Microsoft's really made a significant investment in expanding the platform from just standard old antivirus to actual EDR capabilities and threat and vulnerability management. Now, I'll tell you guys, as an MSP, managed service provider here, and I've helped folks with lots of different aspects of these tools. It's a different conversation with almost everyone I speak with in terms of where their priorities lie. There's two things that are definitely repeatable and measurable events. One is that this stuff keeps growing in terms of requirements and compliance. You can see it here. This list is big, and it's not even the comprehensive list. It's just the highlights. We're going to provide you with a comprehensive table. It's a PDF, and you can kind of review it later. But at the end of the day, the fact of the compliance, regulatory, and feature sets are going to continue to grow is one that's real. And so just be aware of that as you think about these different aspects of the products that you're buying and how you might get the best utilization and use out of them. That kind of lines us right up with the measuring your adoption conversation. We talked about, really how do we go and talk about how you're doing in terms of tool usage. You're paying all this money for these different tools, and you're probably wondering, well, hey, am I actually using this to its full capability? A lot of times the answer is, well, maybe. But let's start out really with kind of a thought. And this is a universal truth we know here at Kite Tech because of the help that we've given folks in some of these conversations. We find it's a really, simple strategy, but it's one that's tried and true. And it really starts out by having a vision, that having a business goal is another way to say that. In addition to that, you want to get leadership support, right? If you don't have leadership support, of course, your vision's probably not going to go very far. As you make the changes, you want to train your end users, and then you want to raise the awareness along the way, which means you're going to have employee education. Maybe you're sending out some emails or newsletters, posters, digital ways and physical ways, lots of different ways to raise the awareness. So that, you don't really successfully go to a place of, adopting a tool, whatever tool it is, without really a plan. And those are just kind of 4 highlights in terms of what we see as value in measuring that plan. So let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest boo-boos or no-nos that a lot of folks assume before we jump into the demo, and it's this usage and adoption. A lot of folks think usage is the same as adoption, and it's just not. A lot of us that are data junkies will get caught up in the details of usage, and we'll say, oh, everybody has 60 gig mailboxes, or, it looks like there's lots of emails going out. But are you really stopping to think, well, how are we actually using these tools? Yeah, sure, we're consuming them. But adoption is about how your business is using them. Are you using them to their fullest capacity or not? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to break this slideshow for a second, and I'm going to share my my Microsoft Edge web browser here for you. And I'm going to just go ahead and review some stuff from Microsoft's backend. Now, let me just say that the stuff that I'm sharing, again, is nothing, there's no special sauce to it other than understanding how to approach it and what it means. But this is Microsoft, analytics that are in the background of every single one of your Microsoft tenant environments. So you're going to want to go ahead and make sure you get some help with seeing this information. This isn't actually something that you can just have keys to seeing, but it is in the back end. For any of you that have IT staff or somebody helping you, they can help you get here for sure. And so you can see I'm navigating all these different little side panels, but this is, admin.microsoft.com, okay? And then in addition to that, you'll find down here in this little reports area, all the way down here, is the adoption and usage. This is what we're going to talk about. And if for some reason you go here and you can't find it, if you just click show all, it'll pop right up. All right, awesome. Well, let's kind of talk again. Usage is not equal adoption, right? But usage does inform whether or not you're getting any use out of these products. And so right here, you can see this is a simple graph, guys. I mean, I'm not going to insult anyone here. I know you guys have seen, graphs over time here, but there's this back end. You can see up to the last 6 months, and you can see it in small or larger chunks here. And so high level, you can see we have a user count, and it shows us how many users are engaged in each of these products, right? And then you can dive in. We're not going to dive into usage too deep because honestly, again, the usage only has, a small value. Obviously, if you're not using the product, you can't really get a sense of how well you're actually, using it and adopting it each and every day. But this is good information to know about and have, right? You can kind of see these high level, and you can even dive in by clicking view more and see some of that. So this is one, view. If you scroll down a while, you can also set it up so you can get usage analytics over to Power BI. I'm going to show that real briefly here in terms of an executive summary. And this data was actually just updated here today. It does show you through October. And high level, we can kind of see, well, hey, we have about 66.2% of active users. Now, our numbers are a little bit skewed because we do have some service accounts in here. So that number should be a little bit higher. But it kind of is telling you, well, how are you using communication? Are you using email? Are you using Teams? Are you using Skype or Yammer? Well, no, we're not, because Skype for us has been sunset and we've been using Teams for a while. Yammer is another application that Microsoft uses, but it's a much larger reach. And so for most SMBs, it's a minimal value up to this point. And so this is showing you how your team is using the Microsoft products that you're paying for. And then, of course, you can dive into any of these things and get some more detail on collaboration usage or adoption. And so if we tapped in, you would see you can get more data around each of these things. So anybody that loves data, I think you'll get a real kick out of what you see here inside of the Power BI and the usage analytics. So that is the usage piece. We're not going to go any further than that, but we are going to now pivot to the adoption score. And so adoption score is something that really helps you understand, well, not just are people using it, but how might they better use it, or what are best practices around those things. And so we're going to take a few minutes and walk through that stuff here right now. And so you can see over here, I'll start out by calling out kind of what our organization score is at a high level. It's 629 out of 800 points, which is pretty decent. You'll notice that the peer benchmark is actually 171 in terms of the points. That's a low bar, guys. And then we're over here at 629. If you look down a little bit more, you can actually see the components of this score. One side of it is the people experience, and the other side is the technology experiences. How well are you equipping your people with the tools to embrace these different products and services? And then, of course, actually, when you give them the tools, how are they actually doing with using them? So let me just draw a really big analogy here, if it's not obvious. I can tell you right now that we have seen folks with really poor technology experiences, and then the people experiences are practically non-existent. Said a different way, if you don't equip your folks with good technology, like decent hardware and updated software, then it's going to limit their ability to use these products well. So that's the high level over here. And you can actually see again over time, right, your scores and how they look. We'll scroll back up to the top, and we're going to talk about each one of these 5 areas briefly. So the communication is really kind of showing you different ways that your folks communicate. We'll dive in here in a second. Before we do, we'll go to meetings. So meetings, a lot of folks are 86% of the meetings in our organization follow the best practices. Well, I wonder what those best practices are, right? How about content collaboration? Are you guys doing any collaboration? Well, you can see, our peer benchmark on this, we're actually above the line, and that's great. But how many of our folks are really collaborating on content? Well, an awful lot. You scroll down a little bit more, you can see teamwork, right? Folks that participate in a shared workspace, whether it's a meeting or a Teams chat or a SharePoint, they have a higher, collaboration. So we have 93% teamwork. I think that means we're doing all right in terms of teamwork. And then there's mobility. Well, considering that almost every one of our employees is somebody who's desk bound and not out in the field using mobile devices as their primary device, I'm okay with this metric at 67%. But this gives you a sense of the people side, right, of the people experiences. We'll scroll down a little bit more, and this is a great experience to kind of measure, right? You can see here, how are we actually maintaining the devices and the networks that our folks are actually participating in using this technology in. And so this gives you a sense of, hey, by the measure of other peers, 50% of your peers have a have a decent desktop computer experience, whereas you're higher than the average. So translated, we equip our people with better technology than most peers. Well, I'm glad to hear that because we're a technology company, so that's great. And then, of course, the network connectivity. Something happened over here on 10-2 11-2, because we had a really bad day in terms of network connectivity. I'm sure that's worth diving into. And then lastly, of course, the Microsoft 365 service health and what all is there. And so let's go ahead and scroll up here. And what we'll do is we'll jump into one aspect of these different people experiences, and I'm going to make it meetings. And so you can see here, this gives you a lot more data. Well, hey, here's meetings with best practices, right? There's, if you scroll down a little bit more, these are actually the best practices. And what do they say? Well, 85% of meetings had someone with video on. That's great because it helps with engagement in your actual meetings, right? 18% of people spend over 10 hours a week in meetings. Well, I'm curious, is that a good thing for us? I don't know. We need to think about that. Sometimes folks experience what's called meeting fatigue. And this is a great example of a metric that should be talked about and understood. This next one, 90% of instant meetings are less than 30 minutes long, right? What does that mean? It means that if you're going to have an impromptu meeting, you probably want it to be short. Why? Because you should be planning out your meetings and strategizing them. And then lastly, how folks are just kind of participating in different kinds of meetings. Are they one-on-one calls? I'm the guy who, rather than using chat, I'll just call somebody, or I'll group call them and dive them into a meeting. And sometimes that's an impromptu kind of meeting. This is the instant meet. And then, of course, these are scheduled one-off meetings and, of course, scheduled recurring meetings. And so this is a high-level view on how you can look out at how your organization is really adopting this technology, right? And so if you see, again, that's the adoption score. We just did meetings. You can do the exact same thing on content collaboration, communication, and you can dive into these specifics. Do they use emails? Do they actually use messages in Teams? Are we using app mentions, and so on and so forth? So that's a little bit of a word on kind of that experience of adoption or usage, right? And depending on which word you want to use, of course, I'm going to use adoption, but that just kind of shows you a view for consideration. And you can use that exact same tool with the help of your IT if you don't have access to kind of seeing it, or if you don't have access or you need help, we can help with that too. Let's go ahead and dive back into the presentation and we'll pick it up from there. So that was the bit about adoption. Now this is a common question we get about which tool to use and when, right? And so this is very, very common. Everyone says, we have all these different tools. How do we use them? When do we use them? Why do we use them? And so this kind of conversation is really one that is an evolving thing. Of course, for every organization, you might not know how to use a tool, or maybe in one team you're going to use it, but another team you're going to use a different tool. So basically, our goal here was to plant a seed about how to think about this question. This is not a question that can be answered with a checklist or an Excel cheat sheet. This is something that requires continual thought. And so I'm going to propose a way that you can kind of think about weighing this out. The first thing you got to do is start with a recognition of what you're trying to solve here. Which tool and when. Most people, when they ask that question, they think about work, productivity, and getting work done. The person, Julie, in this case, is probably not at the forefront of your mind. But I would argue that when you think about which tool and when, in the modern world we live in, it is imperative to think about the person first. And so you're going to ask that question of, well, is Julie comprised of? Well, she works on different devices. She's a person with a professional identity. She's focused on this job role. And then, of course, she has her whole family side and her technical identity as well. And so when you think about this, the next layer of it is kind of the tools that Julie uses. There's a lot of stuff on this table. I'm not going to cover all of them. Again, we're just thinking about single little pieces of this, and then you'll want to ponder this some more offline. So let's think about individuals in email for a second. Everyone here has sent an email or sending email. Of course, they do it each and every day. Raise your hands. I know I can't see them, but raise your hands if you recently have been a participant, willing or unwilling, in an email thread that literally is 6 weeks long or 60 messages deep. That probably should have been a meeting in Teams, or maybe a chat at least. So that's one consideration, right? But Julie's a person. She's going to send emails. She's probably going to send and receive instructions. But email as a tool is not really a tool that's built effectively for collaboration first. So that's one consideration. The other tools that you can see on the left side of the chart here is kind of these little dashboards. At the top, if you don't know the iconography there, those are just symbols for Viva, Microsoft's employee engagement platform. And so really, Julie's going to look at her individual wellness and things she needs to, balance her day out. She's also going to use Teams to find and connect with people. Of course, she'll have her files in OneDrive that are just Julie's work product. And then she maybe might use, some time management tool like bookings or something along those lines to manage tasks. And then, of course, she'll communicate over email, right? And so then if you look on the other side there, she's also going to start to collaborate and connect in these different ways with folks. She'll chat on Teams, she'll develop content that's in a shared space, and then she'll probably track some information in lists and then do maybe some analytics, right? So that's kind of the level of the individual. Now we look at kind of some of these team-based focused. Now, I want to tell you, we're going to talk in a second about the organizational focus. So the team in this specific example is not the organization at large, but it might be a department, right? And so you can see these are other tools, a lot of teams in the team focus, if you hadn't noticed. Maybe planner, right? Or tasks or bookings. You can use those tools to help manage workloads at a team level. And then in addition to that, you might maybe collaborate on OneNote, or you might have a rolling chat inside of Teams, actually where you just have conversations that could be emails, but probably better had as a chat. And then, of course, you're going to also leverage SharePoint for sharing those files or maybe running your intranet. And then every now and again, you might even manage some shifts. Let's say you have some first-line workers, or you have folks that are fractional employees or that need to fit into different time buckets. Shift work, or the ability to schedule people and time inside of Teams is a great way to do that as well. So I don't really think in general that these are things you guys haven't heard before, but the team well-being is really important to call out here too. And so, of course, at an individual level and a team level, you're going to have different priorities in terms of the well-being and health, but of course, you want to care for the whole. So the next piece really is the organizational focus, right? And the organization is going to do different things and use different tools as well. Maybe they're going to use forms to track information. They're also going to conduct webinars like this one. They'll have learning initiatives, right? Like Viva Learn, which is one of the employee engagement platforms, or they'll use Stream, or maybe even Yammer or SharePoint. Those are all different kinds of tools that are best used at scale. I just want to call out, you don't actually see any email here. Now, the reason why is because really email is a thing of the past. If you're still using email for mass communication, there's probably nothing wrong with that, but you might actually consider well, can I use one of these other tools in a way that was called out here today? And I think you'll find that the answer is likely yes. Now, we've gone through a lot of stuff. We're going to go through one other view on kind of this whole aspect behind, really thinking about which tool to use and when. And this is really kind of the relationship and the flow of information, if you will. So, yeah, you can see it's a two-way street, regardless of which way the person is interacting. But what I would say for your organization is you want to really create boundaries at these levels. Hey, if you're a person, you should use a team and these tools. If you're an individual, you're going to use these tools and use them for these specific purposes. And then, of course, the community or organization at large, you're also going to think about that. And those tools will look differently as well. So that's kind of a high level question and answer and thought paradigm, if you will, on kind of which tool and when. It's really, I wanted to ask the question, not answer it. So I hope that this has given you some things to, think about and stimulate your brain on different tools that are there and ways you might be able to use them. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick moment to review Microsoft's roadmap tool. And so they have a roadmap. This information, guys, is something that probably, guys and gals, rather, this is something that probably isn't entirely relevant to you all, but we did say, hey, Microsoft is an evergreen kind of platform, and it's important to understand what, that roadmap and navigating it looks like. So you can see up here again, we have the Microsoft, URL in the browser there. This is the roadmap. And so I'm just going to point out ways that you can look at this and make use of this. So you can see here, these are all the different products. If you're like a OneNote junkie and you're really curious, you just check this box. And then, of course, you can see these other aspects of, is it released yet to the public? Is it still in beta? If you really want to know about it on a specific platform, like you're that guy like me, and you want to know what's it doing on the Mac, you could do that. And then lastly, if this applies and you're in a specific cloud instance, you can see they break them out into different buckets. So for us, though, we're just going to take a look at, now that we've selected OneNote, this is how we can see what's in development, what's rolling out, and what's launched. I always start with launched, when I come in here and I say, all right, well, the MathInc deal, that's not for me. This isn't for me. OneNote feed, yeah, that's nothing great. Okay, what's coming? Dictation in DoD. I don't work for DoD, so maybe next time I'll filter that out. And then, of course, in development, right? And these are things that, maybe have some relevance, right? Like, do I want to see a OneNote notebook on Teams Mobile? Yeah, sure. That sounds great. So that's just a quick view on the roadmap and how to use it. This thing is ever changing and growing, but I just wanted you guys to know it's there. And I think we're going to go back and just kind of recap and review things here and then open up for questions. So, I think I get a lot of folks that ask the same questions after webinars like this or meetings like this, and they'll say, well, can you help me with the bottom line, Adam? What really should I care about? And so this is a simple 6-step process that we kind of wrote up, and we've reused the same, take a similar takeaway here for a lot of these Microsoft bound webinars. It starts by, defining that vision, the leadership alignment, support and empower your users. That, I think you guys get the point of a business goal and a leadership alignment. Of course, supporting and empowering your users is a critical aspect of things that are often missed. You want to know that your people know what's happening, what's changing, and those kinds of things. The bottom half here is even more important in some ways. Expect changes to come. I just went through a whole lot of information. More stuff's on the way, guys. You saw the roadmap briefly. There's a lot of stuff on there. In addition to that, some people are like, well, we don't care about features, Adam. We don't really care. We just want to get our money's worth. Well, you can do that for sure, but you also are probably going to be forced to grow in leveraging some of these compliance, security features, and those kinds of things. But just know that it's on each of us to consider what value's there and how to weigh that in our business. Just to know the changes will keep coming. Ongoing management is required. There's two levels of that. One is the actual, maintenance daily, the back end of your environment and keeping up with all those things. And then in addition to that, you're going to have a new initiative. Maybe today you're using Teams for meetings, and then tomorrow you're going to launch chat in one of your departments. And so ongoing initiatives will be a thing, and then general maintenance just to keep things going, supporting those devices and the users where your people work. And then lastly, of course, consult an expert. We do this stuff every day. Engage your IT staff or your trusted resources, because this stuff isn't easy and it's deep. There's a lot of stuff there. These are just ways that we, typically help folks out: cloud migrations, adoption, security and compliance, identity management, device management, data lifecycle, and governance, those kinds of things. And then we do have this ways to get started. So if you'd like some help, here are the 3 ways that we can help you get started with things. Tom, our VP of Business Development, he's anxious to talk to you. In addition to that, our website, or you can email us. I think we're ready to open up questions. Ryan, what you got?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks guys for submitting questions there. We have quite a few to take a look at here. I'll just grab a couple, and yeah, Adam, feel free to kind of answer as you see fit here.
Sure.
We got a question around Microsoft 365 licensing. How do we upgrade from our current licensing, business standard, to business premium or a different subscription? Do you do it online? Do you call Microsoft? What does that process look like? Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, definitely. So in the back end there, I was in the admin center. And most folks either buy their licensing directly from Microsoft or by way of a reseller through a managed IT provider or something of those sorts. And so typically what you're going to want to do is pay attention to your renewal cycle if you're buying direct from Microsoft. If you're buying from someone else, obviously just give them a shout and they'll be able to help you with that upgrade process. But if you're buying direct from Microsoft, you can actually just purchase that service right in the back end. And depending on the commitment you have, there is now a 1-year commitment Microsoft requires. If you're upgrading, they'll typically let you out of that, but it does require a billing kind of ticket there in the back end if you're buying direct. Your reseller should be able to help you if you're buying through a reseller, and they should be able to get you out of that obligation and into the upgrade SKU without having to pay all that money out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a question I've worked with our clients on. So great question.
Thanks.
Another one is, just a general question, I guess, around encryption. Where does encryption for data at rest fit in?
Sure.
And how does that relate to the Microsoft situation in Mailbox and OneDrive?
Yeah, that's great questions. So basically, there's a couple layers of the data, and encryption should be everywhere. I'll say that. But this goes back to the statement I made earlier that Microsoft gives you the tools, but they require and put on you, the customer, to manage it. And so Microsoft's stuff in their cloud is encrypted. And then there are different layers of encryption. Encryption at rest is native. When you transmit email, you can encrypt that and require specific, different layers of security on it. Why? Because it's leaving your environment and it's going somewhere else. And so Microsoft gives you the tools to do those things. But probably the largest risk we see is the end user devices, whether it's your phone, tablet, or something like your personal computer that you're using. And so that information is only as secure as the device or way it's being accessed. And so the tools are definitely all there to encrypt those devices and the data and access to it, but they have to be turned on. And so I hope that answers the question. Cloud, it's secure. When it leaves the cloud, be going out to somebody else's tenant or email, or you're accessing it from a device that's not cloud, it has to be managed and secured.
Awesome. Yeah, great answer there. We got a question, I guess, just generally around the DLP, or data loss prevention is kind of the term. The question is, does that take the place of RMail? Is that completely different? Is that one of those things that you can deploy, or does it need management? I'll kind of leave that up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so our mail, there's so many services inside of our mail, and I don't even know all of them, but based on what I do know, I put things in buckets of that's dead to me. And so our mail, no offense for anyone who's using it, is a product I haven't paid attention to in a while. But the foundations for their product were policy-based encryption and also email tracking. They do a really, really good job of email tracking. And so our mail does have feature overlap to what Microsoft provides. From a tracking standpoint, it's a lot easier. From an end user standpoint, Microsoft assumes you have IT helping you get that information. But the same level of confidence is definitely there. It's just found in a different place.
Awesome. Let me see here. Actually, one of the questions is around Teams phone systems. We didn't go into that a bunch, or Office 365 phone systems, but I know that's kind of out there. The question is, do you have people that are using it for their phone system? Feedback? What does that look like in the communication spectrum?
Sure. Yeah. And this is a whole nother webinar in itself. But I will answer this very pointedly. We just literally had a webinar that Jason, one of my partners in crime, as I say, we actually haven't gotten locked up. I'm just kidding. We're not doing things that should be locked up, but I hope that made somebody smile. Maybe it wasn't a state trooper. But to answer that question specifically, yes, we have people that are using Teams as a phone system, and they're using it with success. There are, definitely things. I'll give you two bottom lines. It's different. It's not built as a phone system first. It's built as a communication platform. And so if you're the kind of people that say, we love physical phones, we want to have a separate experience, and we're not willing to change the way we think about voice, then I would say go buy an old standalone phone system, and you'll get there. If you're open to communicating differently, Teams is a platform that can really help you leverage those things, and it's great. But if you're looking at it as a standalone phone system without a communication strategy, it's the wrong decision.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, no, I can just speak. We have quite a few clients actually that have moved to Teams Phone. So it's definitely being adopted, and it's growing in the space as far as that regard.
Yeah. I see a question. I see a few here that I'll call out. Somebody had asked, hi, Jill, the question of monthly awareness to our staff, and, kind of does Kite do anything specifically? We do actually. Eleni is in charge of helping draft and put together our monthly newsletter. So that's one way that we speak and share, and that gets attention from every level of our organization. We have not just people who almost have Microsoft tattoos like me, just running his mouth all day about Microsoft, but folks on our help desk, and our account managers are folks that are focused on the business side, not the technical side. And so we do provide that inside of that space on a monthly email. In addition to that, we do have a pretty active, webinar, YouTube, and other socials experience that we do. And we've actually kind of doubled down on our investment in trying to get this kind of information out for next year. And so I would say, if you're already a fan, keep being a fan. And then if you're a client, you'll probably get a couple of extra goodies. But yeah, just stay tuned. If you're not following us, do that. But yeah, that's stuff we're already doing. And it's really a lot of information to try to consolidate in a bite-sized format, especially for folks that are non-technical. And so that is a challenge in wanting to present it well, but yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now. Colleen asked the question of dashboard to your clients. When I think you're referring to, Colleen, the dashboard around adoption, right? And so to answer your question, we're not doing that as a service yet. But that is one of those things that I would expect we're going to start, making a part of the conversation. Really, a lot of folks aren't initially interested in actually adopting the products, if I'm honest. They just want to consume what they need to get their daily work done. We are noticing with our mid to upper sized clients that they value this kind of conversation. And so we have started to share it with them. And what I would say is, as we continue the engagement in the conversation of Microsoft adoption, it's going to be table stakes of things that we do more frequently for sure. But it does require a certain commitment to the value of growing in the product and leveraging the benefits beyond the tangibles of email and documents and those kinds of things.
I got one here, Adam, actually, too.
Sure.
Related to just security and compliance comments, but does Microsoft 365 have everything I need for my business to meet cyber liability and other compliance requirements? And that could be in states like New York, California, other places. It seems like there's definitely a need there.
What about Rhode Island?
Not.
No. So the answer to that question is it has an awful lot, right? And it has a growing list, but I would be lying to you if I told you it will meet all of your requirements. What I can tell you is Microsoft has a set of things that they give the business, the small to medium business, as they call it. And those tools do an awful lot to check a lot of these boxes. Now, it does also require a commitment to abandoning legacy environments like on-prem resources and those kinds of things to really be able to, check the boxes that your cyber liability policies want to see. And so most of it's there is the answer. Places where it falls short is when legacy technology is involved and kind of as things grow, right? And they'll change. But the good news is, if you have enough money, Microsoft probably has a tool for it, because most of what we already covered, is all of it, in fact, is included for SMBs. The upper echelon, you can buy in smaller chunks of their enterprise tool set. And we didn't talk about any of those today, but as the tools, the general trend has been they take things from the enterprise and they package it and pass it down, and then enterprise gets the new goodies. But overall, you can buy what you need and close those gaps for sure.
Awesome. Probably one or two more here. It looks like one question is, hey, we still have a server in the building. How do we get value, or what does Microsoft 365 look like for us?
Okay. Well, there are certain people that think that value in servers is limited to paperweights. Now, I will tell you that that's, there's some truth in that statement, but the reality of, kind of, if we have an on-prem environment, can we leverage the value of the whole? And the answer is you can. There's just a different approach that you need to take, because you need to be able to have a two-headed spear or a dual action approach. I don't really know the right way to describe it, but the rules are different for on-prem than they are for cloud. And so you have to find a way to integrate them both. Now, luckily, if you're living in a Microsoft world and you have, in lifecycle supported OSs on your servers, Microsoft does give you the ability to actually integrate with their cloud resources. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it is more complicated and more costly to maintain, but the foundation is there for sure.
Awesome. I think the last one here is, hey, one of the slides I think had Microsoft Edge as the web browser. Should our team be using Edge? What does that look like for us?
Great question. So we tell people they need to use Edge all the time, and a lot of them say, sure, but I'm still installing Chrome. And so I'll just pitch the simple business value of Edge. Edge is literally a way that you can manage and secure how people browse the internet. It's one extra layer. And what I would encourage you to do is, if you're not already using Edge, or somebody's told you Edge doesn't work, I have to do it in Chrome, is I would test that theory out. We find that Edge is a perfect pairing to the browsing experience, which is a high risk and exposure if it's not secured and managed well. And so for us, it's a non-negotiable. We want to see our clients using Edge, and you get the benefits of security, device, and compliance out of the browsing experience as much as you can, control things on the web. And so we strongly recommend it for sure. Awesome. I think do we want to answer these last couple questions? I know we're over, But why don't we go ahead and knock these other questions out for folks that have asked them. So the comment about email is a thing of the past, internal email outbound. It's a really good question that Darren, thank you for that. So the comment I was making about email is really externally facing. It's a whole different way to think about email, right? The reality of you having to use email for external communication is there. We can't just abandon it. I was challenging the way that folks use email internally first. I will tell you that engagement with your customers and some of your vendors across other platforms, this is a reality, right? And COVID's shown us that, I think, through meetings and that. But for right now, start the question internally. After you've really leveraged and used it, your people will show you better ways that you can get work done just by challenging the question. And then, think about external and specific scenarios. Email's not completely dead. It's just kind of something that is used or could be used dramatically differently than it was before. So that's email. The question about the executive summary in Power BI, there are multiple components around that, Julie, that require, I'm sure, some unpacking and some technical effort to get that to fix. But there are like 4 or 5 dependencies to make sure that report works. So that's something you will need some technical help with. It just doesn't refresh. I actually turned those reports on a few years ago, and I have to renew the tokens and access every couple of months because of the fact that Microsoft doesn't want unfettered access forever, of course. So that was that question. The question on compliance, I think we covered that. Our current managed service provider told us to contact an agent, one of their clients in New York, for assistance. Yeah, so Tim, you're talking about the different compliance rules as it relates to technology, cybersecurity, and those things. Definitely something that has an ebb and a flow to it. Certain folks will say, just answer yes or no to these questions, and then you find out you get in trouble because you just followed bad advice. But at the end of the day, enlisting in help within the industry, we deal with this stuff every day. We have a guy who all he does is look at cyber liability policy compliance all day long as it relates to our environments, right? And so finding an expert that understands not just the insurance side and the policy side, but where it meets the technology, it's a two-spear approach for sure. So that's the one there. And then the last one, and then we'll call it quits here because we're at 3:04. The question of, can Azure Virtual Desktop replace Microsoft Remote Desktop? We have a custom on-prem SQL with Access front end. Can we use Virtual Desktop? I'll answer that question in 2 ways. So DaaS, or Desktop as a Service, is something that literally I was just talking about this morning as we were preparing for this webinar, and we said, should we include DaaS in the conversation or not? And I said, no, we're going to not really talk about that, but here it is. The bottom line is, when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop, it's very much like what I think you're describing as remote desktop. The old traditional RDS, remote desktop services, or terminal services. Citrix is another way. Basically, it's giving you the window into a computer or that's somewhere else virtually, right? And so, yes, that can replace things, but it's important to understand where the other things you're accessing are coming from. So, for instance, right now, if you're getting email, you're getting Teams, you're getting any of these things that already live in Microsoft, they're a cloud technology. So your experience is probably going to be the same. But let's say you're looking at that custom SQL database with a front end on Access. Well, where is that SQL database? Is it in the cloud? Is it in your local environment? And so if you consider how to leverage virtual desktops, you really got to know where all the things are that work together. And so a short answer for that is, if you're going to use AVD, put your SQL database up there with it, right? And then, you'll have a common experience. But there are much more complex technical scenarios that go into that conversation. But hopefully that helped give some value.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you everybody for joining us today, taking a look at some Microsoft 365 pieces of the journey, wherever you guys are on the business spectrum. It's certainly a nonstop journey here. If you guys would like to learn more about some of the services offered by Kite Tech, don't hesitate to reach out. We got some contact information here on the slide. We'd love to hear from you and just explore ways that we could build it into your environment and have that conversation a little bit more in depth. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Be well. Take care.